love Star Trek and video games, but think modern games are way too easy? Are you an absolute masochist that needs a game with absolutely zero handholding in a way too expansive world that's basically impossible to beat without a guide? Well, you're in luck. Star Trek Echoes of the Past for the Sega Genesis is just what you've been looking for. For a game I remember renting multiple times before the age of 12, only to make it through the second major level, I don't remember this being one of the biggest schlogs I've ever tried to get through in video gaming history. Probably because that next level I was only just able to get to before the game had to be returned is quite literally a labyrinth designed by someone that clearly hates gamers and thought they were designing an arcade quarter eater. Something this can never be, since it took me around 20 hours of gameplay with a guide. In general, I'm the type of gamer that desperately tries to avoid a guide until it becomes necessary. The thing is, everything after the second mission of this game absolutely and truly requires a guide. I don't think I've ever played a Sega game this expansive with this much challenge, and I'm not likely to play this game again. The Romulans supposedly lost a science team that are now in Federation space, but it's all a smokescreen to give you random encounters with the Romulans throughout the game, some of which may turn violent if you don't use Picard's master diplomacy skills, but otherwise this supposed science team doesn't actually play into the main story, and knowing the Romulans may not even be real. It just gives them a reason to search for the game's MacGuffin, the IFD. More on that later. Your first mission is a nice easy tutorial board on Codis Nu 6 to help a Vulcan doctor under siege by the Romulans. We easily dispatch them after trying to figure out that the B button has to be used in conjunction with the D-pad to select both the character you want and items, in this case the phaser. Stun all the Romulans and leave the doctor to her work. We will be back here several times as the plot goes on though. In the meantime, the game could follow a straightforward linear path, but we're just supposed to resume standard patrol, which literally means pick a destination and set a course, so that when you get there you get a message from Admiral Baldwin, who for some reason is just wearing 4 pips with no boxing around it to signify he's an admiral. But we'll take him at his word and assume he's not a conspiracy bug, for now. He's sending us to Orion's Alpha 4 to deal with an epidemic. Setting a course there runs us into an unknown ship in orbit that looks like it needs some help. While you can do this in either order, if you want to avoid being chewed out by Admiral Captain Baldwin in the aftermath, it's best to set a course, again, this time at impulse for the planet below and take care of their immediate needs, and then return to the unknown ship. This away mission is where you start to realize this is a Maniac Mansion-style puzzle game, where you've got to wander around, find items, and just know what you're supposed to do with them.
And hope to hell they tell this probe what to go do with this stuff.
That's the general idea.
Without a guide, this can easily take over an hour, and you start the mission in complete darkness unless you brought Data or Geordi with you, which can see a bit better in the dark. Once you fix the broken ship, you find that these people have been in stasis and have been traveling, presumably at warp 1 from the Gamma Quadrant for the last 10,000 years. The Unasians clue us into the major plot by giving us a MacGuffin called the Tavid, and they'd like the Enterprise to now represent them to find the IFD, or Integrated Field Derandomizer, which essentially makes you a god. The Unasians once held this power, but benevolently laid it down because it was too awesome of a responsibility. I'm sure Picard, Master Benevolent Artifact Hunter, will figure this all out and do the right thing. And it's back on patrol at any random course we feel like. I mean, there are literally hundreds of planets and even more moons programmed into this game, and we only need to visit a handful of them. Next, Capmiral Baldwin wants us to go to the mining moon Orion's Gamma 3b to investigate a distress call. And here's where anyone without a guide might start to absolutely lose their mind, put the controller down, and never pick it back up again. This away mission is the very definition of a labyrinth. We need to locate all the trapped miners, and we aren't told how many of them there are, how many are left, and there's no map screen. There are 4 very expansive levels to this mine, and some are split in half and can only be accessed by very specific elevators with a ton of backtracking. I've played harder games in my life, but I've never dealt with a more ridiculous level design than the mines of Orion Gamma 3B. The worst part is, you'll likely have to come back in a later mission. You can actually do both during this playthrough, it's just a matter of bringing Jordy with you, because only he can see the ore veins that need to be mined. There are 49, and you'll need all of them. Though, if you bring him on this run, there's a lot of Horda-like creatures that pop up from the underground, and it is a bit easier to cull the majority of the population before bringing down a senior officer, which if he becomes incapacitated can lead to a game over. Anyway, once you find all the miners, they ask you to try and procure some mining equipment for them in the future. On your next patrol, you'll encounter Damon Turplak, who points you in the direction of Damon Radney to procure some Romulan communications codes and uncover why they keep accidentally ending up inside Federation space. He only gives you a vague idea of what star cluster to find him in, but in the meantime, the Vulcan scientist Talaris from the first mission would like to see you again. So it's back to Codus New 6. You give her the Tavid, and now it's time to go find a Ferengi needle in a haystack. Skipping over the tedious hunt and peck method, heading to Starbase 202 puts us in contact with another Capmiral that tells us Radney may be on the planet below. I sent a full away team first, and this is basically just an open bazaar, and I didn't get any useful information, except one Ferengi claiming to be Radney, but it turns out he's a known liar. I sent just Troy to use her Betazoid charm to hopefully loosen some tongues, and it worked. I got different dialogue and found the Ferengi I was looking for on the planet. He agrees to give us the Romulan codes in exchange for setting him up with the miners so he can sell equipment to them. Everyone wins! On the way back to Codus New 6, again, we encounter a completely optional mission, which I did try but ended up skipping because one of my away team died, got me a game over, and I just couldn't even with the extras at this point. The SS Nakatomi is in need of a Hans to be dropped. A Hans from a race known as the Chodak. And what an appropriate name for a race of chodes. It was only now that I even realized the game has dialogue options when speaking to people, and you have to pick just the right ones in a long conversation to even have a chance at going on this mission. And if you manage to get these speech challenges right, liberating the ship itself from the Chodak is difficult to say the least. And I'm really fine with Nakatomi Plaza going boom. Once more, we go back to Talaris, who tells us we need the minerals from the mines on Orion's Gamma 3B and have to go forth back into the labyrinth. The worst part of this is, every away mission up till now, when you complete the objective, it just beams you back up. Here, you have to somehow know that you need 49 of these minerals in total in your inventory and beam yourself back up when you get them all, because the game will give you no indication. After going through meticulously with a map and not being beamed up, at first I thought I'd missed one somewhere and I'd have to go all the way back through to figure it out. But no, it's just bad game design making me question my love of video games again. So now that our Tavid is all powered up, we head to a subspace anomaly in the Varinator star cluster, which takes Captain Picard to an ancient ruin where the Chodak and Romulans have already converged, and a three-headed thing from the never-ending story pops up out of a pit to tell us about the first of 3 trials we must complete to control the IFD, this being the test of strength. They give you a cryptic description of where to go, which ends up being the moon Varinator Beta 3A. En route, you get ambushed by multiple Chodak drone ships, which are a real pain in the butt. It was only now I realized that in the engineering repair menu, there are sub-menus for weapons, shields, and engines which come into play for this strategy. You'll need to focus on fore and aft shields, fore and aft phasers, and impulse and auxiliary power. The drones only fire photons, so if you can keep close and hold down the phaser button the whole battle, you can best them. If you run or try to use photons, they'll gang up on you, and you'll run out of photons pretty quickly. This is definitely the hardest space battle of the game. When we reach the moon, it's another labyrinth, but thankfully this one is on a single flat plane, just widely spread, where you have to hit switches that open other pathways. The enemies are fierce, and towards the end you have to know to separate your away team and place one at 3 different switch locations and leave them there, so the last can get the shard which proves you completed the task. While I can see this one being possible without a guide, I'm betting it would be a day-long slog trying to figure out where to go in this huge maze. Take the shard back to the 3-headed figure who now sends you on the test of compassion. Compared to the other 2 tests, this one is a nice break. Though a tad confusing without the guide, cross some lily pads because apparently water kills, to talk to a guy that asks you to save his friend and gives you a gem you'll need. You then need to know that you're supposed to go into his hut that you can't see the inside of and steal another gem you'll also need, recross the lily pads, put the gems in a boulder so it rolls out of the way, and then somehow just know that even though all the other jungle in the level is impenetrable, there's one non-obvious spot you're just supposed to walk into and then fumble around blind in the forest for a minute till you find a way out. At which time you'll go into a cave, let 2 away team members press a button while another crosses a bridge, and that's it. You saved the dude's friend. Easy, if a little nondescript. Back to the 3-headed guy with one more riddle of a planet, and we're on our way to Verinder Delta 5 for the test of wisdom. And by the great koala, nothing in this game has prepared us for the masochistic level design to come. This should be called the test of hunt and peck trial and error. After an initial easy puzzle where you set all your away team members in front of one of 4 buttons, we have an invisible path on the floor to figure out, which isn't too bad, just tedious. But this next major task is the beginning of insanity in this board. There are 6 buttons, which when each one is pushed, raises a certain section of floor. You then have to send one of your away team to walk on the section raised and stop at a certain point in the path, not always the last block. Alone, the 6 buttons that need to be pushed in the correct order of 6 presses gives us a maximum number of 720 combinations, and that's not including the variable that your 4th member has to walk after each press to an unknown specific point, or you get teleported and have to start again. It's not like there's some kind of clues as to what order this needs to be done in either. It's purely a trial and error puzzle. After a few more minor puzzles, we encounter another room with this same puzzle, with again way too many combinations for any normal human to figure out in a timely manner. Then a series of transporter pads that you have to continually step on the correct one of 4, another invisible path puzzle, now with more pillars blocking your way, followed by a room where you have to fix 3 transporters with a replicator. Then, split your team up, send them through the various transporters you fixed, leaving one at specific levers, doing some backtracking so that the 4th member can get the Shard of Wisdom. I thought the Mines of Orion's Gamma 3B were bad, but they're just long and tedious. This mission broke me. Even with a guide, I come out of this very, very annoyed with the game designers. You certainly got your money's worth paying $50 in 90s money out of this game, though. Taking the shard back to the 3-headed statue now gets you to take part in Mortal Kombat! Or, in true Star Trek fashion, a test of your patience and compassion. The Romulans and Chodak are competing here, attacking each other and you in a triangle arena, along with another member of this overseeing race that we'll call Shang Tsung for now. The objective is to ignore the battle and place 2 of the 3 shards in pillars to make the Romulan and Chodak disappear. I do find it a bit odd that you have to then shoot Shang Tsung a few times to get him to move and reveal the final pillar to place the last shard. At which point, Picard is offered to be made the most powerful being in the galaxy. I think Q would like to have a word with Jean-Luc about this. But being the strong, compassionate man of wisdom he is, gives the command to keep the IFT hidden away for another 10,000 years, till the next Mortal Kombat tournament. Even with alternate dialogue, there's no way to make Picard Emperor of the Galaxy, but that's perfectly in keeping with TNG. And now, we roll credits. So here's where I rate this game in 2 categories out of 10, story and gameplay. the story is a pretty mediocre standard Star Trek formula. It's interesting, if not terribly in-depth. Compared to other episodes of TNG, I can only give the story about a 4.5. It's serviceable, but considering how many hundreds of planets they programmed into this game, to only end up going to a tiny fraction of them felt like this large universe was made artificially small. As far as gameplay, I'll give it a 5. For a game from the early 90s, they packed an awful lot into it, even if it's too difficult by itself. It needed a map feature, and while I detest how some modern games hold your hand from start to finish of a quest, this has the exact opposite problem. You're often not given enough information to fully complete your tasks, or in some cases, know when you've finished them. This is one of the hardest games of any genre I've ever played in my life, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but when a game starts to feel like a chore, it's not great. If you're a diehard fan of TNG or a retro gaming enthusiast, I do recommend playing it once, cause I certainly won't be playing this game again of my own free will, unless it's to do a live stream, which I may well do in the not too distant future. If you played this game, what are your thoughts? I'm planning on making more of these Trek gaming videos this year, so stay tuned. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider a like and subscribe. And until the next mediocre Trek game, live long and prosper.
Breaking directive.